Hey there, editors! So you've got to make a page. This could be your first time ever making one, or it could be your 10,000th or whatever, but that doesn't really change the facts. InDesign is weird and intimidating. You probably never even touched half of these settings up there. And who even knows what graphic design is supposed to mean, right? Today, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks to both help you set up your pages and give you some direction on how to make them more eye-catching and appealing. This video is going to assume you at least know something about InDesign, so if you don't, or you see something that doesn't make sense, check out the InDesign tutorial which explains all of those things in depth. Let's start with creating your page. Feel free to follow along on your computer. When you open up InDesign, go to File and make a new document. If you're using a journalism laptop, there should be a document preset called Journalism or something similar. If not, you can make some yourself with a few adjustments. First, let's start with the default preset. In page size, set the width to 11 and the height to 17. Make sure these are in inches. If the margins aren't already, set them all to 0.5 inches. You can leave everything else as is. File names for your pages should be STOW in all capital letters, an underscore, and then the page number, the month, and then the day your pages are due. Hit create, and then we can go to work setting all the details for your page. Start by drawing a line across the top of the page. It should stretch all the way from the left margin to the right. Make sure that, in the little panel where the size is displayed, the length is 10 inches. Once that is created, switch to the selection tool and click on the line again. Change the Y value in the upper left-hand corner of the screen to 1.25 inches. Make sure the line style is solid and the width is 1 point. To make the new header, create a text box for whatever your page is going to be called. In this example, I'll call it News. Highlight your text, then set the size to 60 and the font to Times New Roman, regular. Set the style to small caps and then the alignment to center. If your page is a color page, the heading is going to be maroon. To make maroon, make sure the text is highlighted, then go to the color picker. Set C to 40, M to 80, Y to 60, and then K to 30. It would be helpful to add this color into your swatches. Once you've done that, center the header and zoom in so you can see the header line. Move your header down so it is touching the line, and then move it up by hitting the arrow key twice. To make the page number, copy-paste the headline and set the size to 36. Write in whatever page number you have. If the page is even, set the alignment to align left and then match the edge of the bounding box to the left margin. If it is odd, set the alignment to align right and then match the edge of the bounding box to the right margin. Do the same thing to vertically position the page number that you did for the headline and you should be good to go. Once you've got the basic layout of the page, you can get towards designing. The most important aspect of design is creativity. Even if you have something like a news page, which probably seems pretty boring, there's a lot you can do to enhance it and make it look visually engaging. That being said, there are still some things you need to keep in mind when designing a page to make sure you maintain readability and intrigue. First, let's talk about stories. When you have a story to put on your page, you can just copy and paste it directly from the Google Doc into a text box on InDesign. Since I don't have a story right here, I'm going to fill this box with text by going into Type and clicking Fill with Placeholder Text on the drop-down menu. This is your body text. Make sure it is size 10 and in Times New Roman regular font. Next, for the headline, make a new text box and fill it with whatever you want to call your story. Your headline should be between sizes 24 and 42 usually, but ultimately it's up to you to figure out what works for your page. When deciding what font to use, keep in mind that, in graphic design, it isn't recommended to use more than 3 fonts on a single page to help with design coherence and unity. If you want more variation in your headlines, try to use different text styles to create diversity. For this story, I'm going to use a bold font like Futura because I want to be serious and impactful. To adjust the number of columns in your text box, go to Object and then click Text Frame Settings. There, you can adjust the number of columns, the width of those columns, and the space between those columns. You can also choose to balance those columns, which will make it so the same amount of text goes into each, and the inset, which will create a margin between your text and its frame. This is helpful when you have text in shapes like boxes or frames. Now that we have the box for a story created, the last thing we need to add is our byline. This is where we put the name of the person who wrote the story, and their position. In this case, we'll use me as an example. Draw a line above the start of the article so that it is the same width as the column. Make sure that it is less than 1 point in size. Then, in a text box in 9-point font, Times New Roman, write the name of the person who wrote the story, a space, a /, another space, and then their position. Since I'm the writer of the story, you'll write co-editor-in-chief, but if the writer was a staff writer, you would write staff writer, and so on and so forth. If you ever need to know whose position is what, feel free to ask. Make the name bold italic, and then make the title regular italic. Drag it down to the top of the line so it is touching, and then move it up twice. Shift-click or drag with the Select tool to select both the line and the text, and then go to Object and click Group to group them. Finally, check one of the text wrapping options at the top of the screen. It doesn't matter which one for now. Align your byline with the edge of the column, and then move it down so that the text is about level with the first line of the next column. If you look, you notice that there is very little space between your byline and your first line of text. To fix this, go to Window, and then open up the Text Wrap panel. In the options to adjust the text wrapping margins, adjust the bottom one to 0.1. Your finished byline should look like this. This looks great, but it's also a little, bland. To spice things up, let's add pictures. To add a picture to your page, go to File, Place, and then select the image you want to add from your files. Click somewhere off screen to place it, and then drag it to where you want. To resize an image without changing the dimensions, hold down Command and Shift while adjusting. You can put it beside your story, but that looks a bit boring here, don't you think? Instead, let's get a bit creative. Make sure the bounding box around your image is blue by double-clicking, then drag it onto your story. You probably noticed from doing this that the image is in front of the text, and we don't want that. Luckily, there's a simple solution to this. While selecting the image, click Wrap Around Bounding Box or Wrap Around Object Shape, whichever fits your needs better. The text will immediately change to fit around your image. Click your text box to make sure there's no text outside of the frame, and adjust it if so. You've just made your page a whole lot more interesting. However, if you want to have your image show up behind your text instead, reset the wrap settings and open up the Layers window. Layers are a great way to set up your image arrangements and easily organize the different components of your page. Currently, there should only be one layer in the Layer tab. Click the arrow next to where it says Layer 1, and you should see a drop-down menu with all the different components of your page. Find the one with the name of your image file and drag it down below your text. Once you've done that, make sure your image is selected, and then click the opacity settings to bring down the adjustment slider. Use this to lower the opacity of your image so that you can still read the text in front of it. You can resize and adjust it however you need, as long as the text is still readable and doesn't look awkward. If you're comfortable with where it is on the page and don't want to move it while you're working on other things, hit the square right next to its name on the Layer tab to lock it. The last thing you need to do now is source and caption your image. If you didn't make your graphic in InDesign, you will need to reference where it came from. You can do this by adding a separate text box somewhere on your page. In your text box, write the word source and a colon, then write the name of wherever you got it from, and then, if possible, the artist or creator of the image. For this image, I will write source Stohayan / Lillian Fiedler. If you got your image from a royalty-free clipart website, you would list the name of that website and then the name of the artist if it is available. If not, just leave the name of the website. However, if you got the image from a single person, for example, if you asked a sports player for a picture of themselves at a winning game, instead of source, you will write photo courtesy of, and then a colon, and then the name of whoever the image was taken or sent to you by. Make it size 6, Times New Roman font, and italic. You should usually put this in the bottom right corner of your image. If your image needs a caption, make a new text box and write up to 2 sentences describing the image, then set this to bold Times New Roman, size 8. The text box bound should line up with the size of the image. Group these all together and set text wrap for the bottom of this group to 0.125, and now your image is fully captioned. Now you know all the rules, but the beauty of page design is that, aside from these guidelines, you can structure your page just about however you want. You can use the full array of tools InDesign has to offer to create graphically interesting, hard-hitting, and unique page layouts. The sky is basically the limit, and you're encouraged to try new things and experiment. That being said, there are some principles to graphic design which will help you create visually appealing and eye-catching pages, and improve readability for your audience. One of the simplest to remember is hierarchy. Plainly put, the larger something is, the more important it is. If you've got a story that you want to be the main focus of the page, whether that be because it's a part of the maestro or just a really good story, make the headline and body larger than the others. The reader will be drawn to it immediately. If you want to add more visual interest to a story and highlight certain quotes you found particularly important, you can pull quotes from the story and insert them at various points. Just take a quote from the story you like, put put it in a separate text box, and set the text wrap properties. Your quotes should be important in some way, and properly attributed to the person that said them in the story, so if your quote ends in person said, make sure to include it. This little thing is called a pull quote. Putting text in shapes and boxes is a good way to break up monotony, but make sure your body text isn't hugging the lines, so to speak. To adjust the space between your box and the text, go to Object and click Text Frame Options. You have a whole page full of space to work with, so be creative with your arrangements. If you have two headlines directly next to each other, you are doing something wrong. That is called tombstoning, and it's a big no-no in page design. It's okay to have stories beside each other, but don't let the headlines touch, kids. While you want the individual elements of your page to stand out, there should be a sense of unity across your page. A good way to do this is to pick a color palette. You usually want to limit your palette to 3 or 4 colors, but 2 or even 1 can work sometimes if you adjust the saturation and brightness. Consider your palettes carefully, as they should be organized to convey a mood, feeling, or idea. And finally, be sure to use the full capabilities of InDesign to your advantage. There are lots of effects and tools specifically designed to help you create engaging and interesting pages. I explained them more in depth in my full InDesign tutorial, so if you haven't yet, or you need a refresher, feel free to look back at that for inspiration. The Stoheian also has a backlog of editions of the paper available on the website and physical copies in the school. You can use those for reference and inspiration. When you're done with your page, remember to save it, and when sending your pages, hit File, Export, and make sure the format is Adobe PDF Print. Thanks for watching, editors. Good luck with your pages, and remember to ask your leaders or instructor for help if you have any questions. Have fun!